Welcome to Risk Roundup. The threat posed by cybercrimes is getting bigger than ever, and it is growing exponentially. When the most successful criminals are those that can hide behind the anonymity that the cyberspace offers, and people are more likely to be victimized in cyberspace than in geospace, it is a cause of great concern to each one of us. Today, cybercrime has now surpassed illegal drug trafficking as a criminal moneymaker. With uncountable annual cyber attacks, cybercrime is a real threat to anyone using computers or smartphones or tablets, Internet of Things, and any other gadgets that are connected to the Internet. Every single day, either somebody's identity is stolen or someone's confidential data is stolen. And the victim count to financial loss because of cybercrime keeps growing and growing. How does this impact us individually and collectively? To discuss the impact of cybercrimes, I'm delighted to welcome Gary Berman to Risk Roundup. Gary is the founder of Cyberman Security and is based in the United States. Welcome, Gary. We are honored to have you on Risk Roundup.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful. So, Gary, the rapidly evolving cybercrimes shows great vulnerability of cyberspace and the digital global age. Keeping up with the growing complexity of the nature of cybercrimes is a challenge facing everyone, individuals as well as entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. What is the status of cybercrimes as you see from your perspective?
My perspective is a little bit different than most cybersecurity experts because my expertise comes from being a victim. And the story that I'll be sharing you through our time together today is quite unbelievable, literally, that we were victims of a persistent series of cybercrimes over a period of 15 years. And beginning about a year ago, I decided to do a deep dive to address your question. You know, what are the social, economic, and political effects of the increasing dangers of cybercrime globally? And I have several conclusions that I've come up with, just as I said, from the perspective of a victim. One is it's not a question of if you or your organization or even your family are going to be hacked. It's just a question of when. The second thing that really I think was quite startling to me is cybersecurity as an ecosystem is incredibly complex, much too complex for a regular person to try to understand. And if you're the owner of a small and medium business, it's really incredibly difficult to wrap your mind around the complexity of the cybersecurity ecosystem and how to defend yourself. And then the third big conclusion that I can speak with unfortunate credibility, excuse me, is that the majority of cybercrime actually is because of human error. And you can have, outstanding software, outstanding hardware, great chief information security officers, but all it takes is a person at an endpoint, someone at a computer or on their smartphone, to just make the whole system vulnerable and really come crashing down. And I think the last thing I would say about the complexity of cybersecurity is that the lines between work and home have been erased. And so if you make a mistake at work, that puts your family at risk. If you make a mistake at home on your cell phone, that puts your work at risk. So this blurring of the lines is something that I'm spending a lot of time working on.
No, you're absolutely right. All the points that you made are excellent. Like, first is it's not like if you are going to be hacked. It's just a matter of time when you will be hacked. And the second point is that this is very, very complex. And, the complexity is so huge and so enormous that our understanding and education and awareness is not there for everyone. And the third line that you said about blurring boundaries, if you make a mistake at home, it may impact your work. If you make a mistake at work, your home, will be vulnerable because of the interconnections and interdependencies and interconnectivity. So that is also another huge problem, that if one organization or one individual does everything right to secure or to protect their, cyberspace, or, all their ventures on the cyberspace, or anything that they are using, or phone, or iPad, or computers, if they are secured. But if the others that are in their network, irrespective of whether it's work or anywhere else, if they are not secure, then you bring that vulnerability to yourself. So there are a lot of complex challenges, and as cyber criminals are technologically more experienced and educated, they take advantage of individuals and also the organizations that are not cyber literate, by using that cyber knowledge to trick all those, cyber illiterate, irrespective of, nations, or irrespective of the industry, into giving their vital information, such as their bank account information or social security number. So this cyber education challenge that brings great vulnerability to each and every nation, each and every individual and organization, is a very complex challenge.
Yes, and it's true, everything that you said. And what's interesting about it, though, to me and for our experience, when I was trying to decide, well, how do we take what happened to us and turn it into something good for the larger world? Where do you start? Because of the complexity. And so we decided, which I'm sure, we'll discuss a little bit, to create a comic book series, The Adventures of Cyberman, from victim to advocate. On the idea that if we could distill incredibly complex cybersecurity information down to something that a lot of people love around the world, which are superheroes in comics, and make it entertaining and fun and engaging, then they're more likely to remember what it is that they just read and saw. And
absolutely, and that's very, sorry to interrupt, but that's such an excellent initiative, because this education, the comic books that you are creating, is an education medium, and it has to start right from the childhood. All the kids love to read comic books. So if you are able to put together this whole security format education in a comic book format, it will help kids right from the beginning, right from childhood, to learn, to get educated. So I really like that idea of yours.
Thank you. And we've really been blessed because starting only about 30 days ago, one person at a time, with my little thumbs, on my smartphone, I went to LinkedIn and I did some searches using Chief Information Security Officer, IT, senior level executives. And I started inviting them to take a look at something that I had posted, which is a picture of the comic. And then I asked the LinkedIn world to please just send me stories about victims and answer 3 questions. What happened? What were the consequences? And what were the lessons learned? And we're going to take those real life stories from around the world and make comic book instructional tools, based out of them. So let me ask you a little quiz here, if you don't mind. So I started only 30 days ago with these 2 little thumbs, one person at a time, inviting the most senior people around the world in technology. Take a guess how many people have said yes to connect with me in 30 days.
Oh, I'm sure it would be thousands.
10,670 people.
I'm not surprised. And believe me, when there is the right initiative, when there is the right message, and when there is right passion to do something for the greater good of the humanity, connections and support will never be a problem. So I'm not surprised. Congratulations on that. That's an excellent idea, to invite all those real life stories, because it's learning from those real life stories that we'll be able to put together the right proactive approach as well as the reactive approach. What measures needs to be taken, before we get hacked, and what measures need to be taken, after we get hacked. So that is an excellent initiative, and believe me, this will keep growing and growing, because everyone wants to help, in the right initiative. When I launched the Risk Roundup, this series, let me tell you, when I had only 10,000 followers that time, and a lot of them were my connections. As soon as we launched Risk Roundup and with the right message and what we are trying to do to create education and to raise awareness to everyone across nations, all the decision makers from the highest level to, from industries, from government, from organizations, everywhere we are getting amazing support. And we are
It's
getting following from each and every nation. You would be surprised, from Middle East, from Africa, from Europe, Asia. There isn't a nation where we don't have following. So what you are saying is absolutely right, that when you have the right message and when you are trying to do something for the greater good of the humanity, getting support is not a problem, and you will keep getting more and more support. So
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. And to me, what was also incredible about that is it was very reaffirming, because having gone through the experience that we did, and we lost, several $1 million, to know that there are all these wonderful people, around the world who want to do the right thing, who want to be helpful, is an extremely uplifting thing, and it's fuel. It's why, oftentimes I start working at 4 o'clock in the morning, because at last, I have a mission that is going to bring some justice, to the world. And the people that responded, it was amazing to me. I mean, so, you had all types of law enforcement people and senior people, like the director of the FBI, the director of Homeland Security, cybersecurity czar of the White House, the head of the Secret Service. I mean, the most senior people, and they've all agreed, to try to help and to spread the word. So I feel so privileged to be surrounded community of good people, and it's refueled my optimism.
Absolutely, there are a lot of good people out there in each and every nation, and your support will keep rising. Would you like to share your story of what happened? You just mentioned that you lost several $1 million. What happened? How did that happen? And what can our global viewers and listeners learn from that? And how can they do things proactively or do things differently so that they can protect themselves from not falling victim to that?
Yes, that's a really good question. My story is very unusual, but not unique in that my wife and I started a marketing company about 25 years ago. Thank goodness it went very well. After 10 years of being in business, we did a joint venture with the largest marketing company in the whole world, and things were going just great. Unfortunately, I suffered a near-death injury, so I was out of my own company for a period of about 6 months. During that time, without me knowing it, a series of key executives, insiders, decided to start their own competitive company while working for me full-time. And so I noticed over, a period of months that our sales, were just going down, when really they were going straight up as a result of this merger. And one day, I got a call from the CEO of our partner, and he was hollering, yelling at me, what the heck is going on with your company? And I was shocked. Because we had very big, important clients, big global companies like AT&T, Procter and Gamble, General Motors, and our reputation was stellar. And so I'll never forget, was yelling, what is going on? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to. So he then went on to tell me that he got a call allegedly from one of my key executives who worked for me, saying that there was rampant fraud within my operation. And my jaw almost dropped. I said, what? And I said, who called? I mean, we can get to the bottom of it. And he declined to mention. So it's kind of like a whistleblower idea. So I called all my staff in, explained what had happened, and we, redid all the work we were doing. We did a series of audits. And you have to keep in mind, this was 15 years ago, so you never heard about hacking on the news. I knew nothing about technology whatsoever, and I had a technology consultant helping with things. Well, it turns out he was the culprit that had been doing what I'm about to tell you. So we couldn't find anything wrong. And over time, like layers of an onion, I started noticing some things. The big aha moment for me was when I walked into one of the executives' office and there was an external hard drive attached to his computer, which is not something that we ever used. And I went around to his computer and he was downloading intellectual property and client data. So I said, "What are you doing?" And he was startled. So I pulled out the hard drive and I said, "You need to leave now." And I'll never forget, and forgive me pointing, but he went like this. He said, "You have no idea what hacking is." And he laughed. I was stunned. So it turns out he was right, because I had no idea. What they had actually done at that time is they created a duplicate website. It's called, spoofing a website. Anytime someone called into one of our telephone numbers, it was redirected to their company. They took our intellectual property and just put their brand on it and went like this. They called our biggest clients saying that we were a fraudulent company, and so all my clients just left. And so after a period of years, we realized, a little bit about what had happened, and so we had to close the company. I lost several $1 million from that. So, a reasonable question, that I was asked, well, what did you do? Well, my wife and I, just because of how we are as people, we did not want to put bad karma out, into the universe. And we said, okay, it's over. That chapter's closed. We started from nothing before. Let's try it again. And it didn't work. And we couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. So after a period of years, I went working on United States veterans issues to help people reintegrate back into civil society, and we moved into children's education and things like that. Well, I really was not able to provide for my family. So after 10 years after that, so this is now 2 years ago, I decided to get back into the marketing field that I was well regarded for. I made a couple phone calls and I was welcomed back, so much so that I was invited to be the master of ceremonies of a large industry conference. It went great. People were coming up, handing me their business cards, and I went, thank you, God. I have a chance to rebuild, my life. The very next day after that conference, not one, but two of the former employees checked out my LinkedIn profile. I could see that they did. And I said, what? It's been, 10 years, and they checked out my profile. And the next day, the hacks started happening. Boom, 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 boom. Files were deleted. Presentations were changed. I had a $400,000 proposal to a very large global company, and the last slide of my PowerPoint, would say thank you, but it was changed to, I'll just use the word F you, which is not really a way to try to, get business from a global client. And so I told my wife, and she thought that I was misinterpreting, which is very easy to do. That's one of the challenges in cybersecurity and cybercrime. It's very easy to have false attributions, and it's even harder to get an accurate attribution to link the culprit with the crime. So I knew nothing about technology at all. I knew nothing about cybersecurity, and I did a deep dive to listen and learn to the smartest people around the world. I read everything that I could get my hands on just to try to understand, and I started noticing something's happening on my system that I wouldn't have known about. So I started using my iPhone, or my BlackBerry, and I just started taking photographs and making videos of different things that were happening because I knew no one would believe me. And one thing led to another. I amassed a very thick book of evidence, and I took it to the FBI, and we're in process right now.
Wow, what an incredible story. So it was an insider, one of your own employee, who was sabotaging and who was creating all these events that brought the fall of your company.
Exactly, and so what I did was in the comic that I'm building right now, I created characters that are personified after real life situations. So to depict an insider threat, I'm just calling it Evil Butler and Evil Maid, and they're these two creatures. just like in your home, if you were to allow a trusted person into your home, they have the keys to your house. Well, the same thing is true within a business. If you have trusted people, they have proximity to your computers, to your physical devices. They can drop a thumb drive, which then, inserts malicious code into a computer system. So, one of my other big takeaways as I'm saying this out loud is it's a very fine line to being cautious and then crossing over to being paranoia.
Yes.
And you don't want to be paranoid because that's just an unhealthy way to live. On the other hand, I think, based on what's going on in the world, it's a good idea to be cautious.
Yes, we do. It's a necessity. It's a survival need to be cautious. Now, let me ask you this: the company that you had, you said intellectual property was stolen and a lot of proposals and all that. It was a marketing organization, or what was the nature of your company's product and services?
We did market intelligence, consumer market research across a number of verticals like telecommunications, financial services, automotive, consumer goods, and things like that.
Also, market research, the market intelligence data that was stolen.
Yes.
Now, is it okay for you to share whether it was a foreign national or it was someone, the domestic?
Well, because I'm involved with the FBI right now.
Let's not share that. I understand that. I understand. No, I'm just trying to understand who was it, a nation state behind getting that kind of data?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, good question. No, what they did was the motivation. People would ask, well, why would someone do that? And especially, why would someone do it? Like 10 years later. So the first motivation was purely economic crime. They had set up their own identical company doing the exact same thing that I did while they worked for me full time. And so it was easier for them to steal than to just do what took me 10 years to build.
Very, very unfortunate, and I'm really sorry, very truly sorry to hear this horror story that you had to go through. But what is even more troubling is that they still continue. When you relaunch your company, they still continue to attack, and that is something you will need to figure out. And I'm sure the law enforcement will help you figure out why is your company still a target? What is it that you do, and what kind of data that you are, gathering that is still an interest to all these criminals or, would-be criminals, and they keep trying hacking you. That is something you all will have to collectively figure out, because the more sensitive nature of the data that you are creating, more intelligence you are creating, it is certainly of interest to a lot of, parties, and they want to access that kind of data. So that is something you will have to figure out, that why is your data attracting these criminals?
Well, just to clarify, rather than our information attracting criminals, it's just motivating one small group of them. So it isn't that my information is valued. In fact, it's not to anyone.
I see.
So it's just my former employees. So what happened was the original motivation you would define as just an economic crime. Why this small group of people? It's 4 people. So just to be clear, it's not anyone else. People hack for different reasons, and I've learned a lot about motivation of hackers. I read, for example, a very interesting survey that was done at what's called DEFCON in Las Vegas, United States, this last year. And the security firm interviewed about 100 what they call black hat hackers, which are, sort of the bad people, and also they interviewed the people defending them. And the reasons that they hack are varied. In my case, it pivoted from an economic, motivation to something more along the lines like revenge, and some type of psychological, kind of reason. It's no longer economic because I'm not in that business anymore. I had lost everything. I'm doing Cyberman now. I'm this reluctant cybersecurity, educator. But for the larger, viewing audience, there's no question that they do it because they can. A lot of hackers just think it's fun. Oh, I can do it, and I can see you through your webcam, or I can get into your credit card. Well, that gets into financial, motivation, and then larger, organized, crime efforts and things like that. Nation state sort of hacking is really at the bottom of the list, according to the survey. That's a very rare occurrence. Let me rephrase that. It's an increasing occurrence, but it involves big intrusions. What I'm really focusing on are regular people. A mom who wants to protect her daughter. A person who has 100 employees who wants to stay in business. And things like that. I don't have any credibility or authority to try to talk about larger sorts of intrusions, but there are many, many wonderful experts in the cybersecurity ecosystem that do.
Oh, definitely, and believe me that there are a lot of different ways and in different formats that we can provide the resources and expertise that is necessary for everyone to stay safe in cyberspace. And your story, what you and your company went through, was because of this insider, hacking or insider, one of your employee doing all this damage to your company and organization. But in cyberspace, there are so many different criminals that are out there that are experts in social engineering or manipulating users into performing actions or giving up their confidential information. And not many people understand that. Everyone uses social media, but they don't understand what to share, what not to share. So what implications do you see, and how do you, as you prepare these comic books and as you try to educate the individuals as well as small organizations to prevent themselves from becoming a victim, what do you tell them? How to effectively prevent this kind of cyber attacks?
Well, it's really fantastic that you mentioned the idea of social engineering, because that is what happened to me. If you think about it, they were someone who they were not. They called clients saying things and representing things that were not true. And, so one of my characters, just to show you how on target you are, is called the social engineer. And I've created a puppet, like a marionette. So, the sticks are on the top, and this character is hanging by threads and being manipulated. And that's the social engineer. And I hope that maybe through this communication, you're able to insert some of the characters so the audience can see what I'm talking about. Because coming up with, try to sort of personify, a hack is incredibly complicated. Especially since I have no experience, making a comic book. But they came out, quite well. And so social engineering to me is a huge threat for the larger cybersecurity or the larger world, because you don't know who's on the phone. You don't know who's sending you, this email requesting, that you click on this link because we need to update your information. And just to take that a step further, you mentioned earlier, think of children, or think of the elderly, older people who are less sophisticated, how they're just so vulnerable. So that's our hope, that in some small way, by raising awareness that these things could happen.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
a way.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right about it. And one fact is that, like, you were a victim. You suffered enormous loss. It was a financial loss. You talked about the financial impact to your company and to yourself, that you had to restart. You had to start all over. But there is also another aspect other than the financial impact, and that is the social implications. Now, all these victims, they cope. It's very difficult for them to cope with the fallout from irrespective of whether it's insider, hack, or insider created, trauma, or identity theft, or sexual abuse, or financial ruin. And there not many people understands, or there is not much awareness about how to cope up with the social impact. And sociologists and psychologists and psychiatrists, I'm not sure if they are ready, or if they even have a proper programs to help this kind of victims. So how is this social impact of cybercrime can be handled, and what can be done? How did you recover from that, you and your family?
That's such a great analysis. Well, I think the first thing to do is to humanize the statistics. I think because cybercrime is so prevalent, you hear about these massive hacks and loss of data. I think people are immune to understanding it. So, one of the reasons that we've taken this approach is to make it real, is to humanize through this particular story what can happen, and most importantly, what you need to do to protect yourself. And so one of the other interesting things that I learned through this past year of jumping into the hacking ecosystem is like in the small to medium business market. That's people with companies with less than 1,000 people. They have what I call the small to medium business paradox, because they think that no cyber criminal is going to come after them because they don't have anything of value, which is exactly why cyber criminals go after them. And to your point earlier about with the social impact, how do you recover? 60% of all small to medium businesses that are hacked are out of business within a year. 60%, they're gone. They can't recover. And so in my case, I was one of them. I could not recover. We depleted all of our personal savings to keep the company and our employees going. And so fast forward to today, this moment with you. This is how I'm coping with it, to pivot from being a victim and to become an advocate, to try to bring some sort of larger justice to the world, and to have this experience have meaning in that way.
Well, that's an excellent way to go forward. That's an excellent way to cope, that while you became victim, you want to make sure that others are not victimized, and you want to help them, stay in a healthy state, and you want to make sure that you help them in any way you can. You create education awareness, and you make the society much more stronger. And that is probably the larger role maybe you were supposed to take, rather than, having that marketing organization that you had. So maybe 10 years from now, you will be able to connect the dots, that why you became a victim and why you had to launch this organization, and what was the reason you had to go through this whole journey of becoming a victim. There must be some reason, a bigger picture that we are not able to see right now. We are just seeing it from the perspective that you became a victim, you lost everything. But there is something bigger that you are destined to do, probably. So and you are passionate, you are doing it in the right way, that you want to have some constructive effort, or because of that victimization, that you want to create something bigger than yourself. You want to work towards something bigger than yourself, and that's an excellent way to go forward. But if we talk about millions of cybercrime victims, a lot of time, a lot of them lose money. A lot of them, are able to at least restore some stolen money, most of the time. If it's a credit card, was hacked, or credit card was stolen and things like that, or the bank account, they are able to recover some money. But these events, as you have suffered, that it traumatizes people, and a lot of them are so vulnerable that then they lose the trust in the internet, and then they delete all their accounts. They don't want to be on the internet. Now it's very easy, to get traumatized and to make a decision that I don't want to be part of the internet. I'm just going to keep, my life simple, not to, go on the internet, not to have any connectivity, not to have any social media accounts. They isolate themselves. how is that I mean, do you see that because you can speak, from your personal experience, do you think that there's a right way to go, that you just stop being on the internet, or you educate yourselves and you make yourself much smarter and more stronger in terms of your surroundings, and you know what you are supposed to do, you educate yourself? That is one approach. And the second is that, is there any help available for victims of cyber crimes to help them go through this trauma? I mean, from my assessment, that psychiatrists, psychologists, or counselors, they don't have enough programs, or any effective program at this point. But is there any other kind of help available for the victims of cyber crimes?
Well, I don't know how many hours we're going to stay on this podcast, because you just brought up a whole lot of important issues. So I'm just going to go back and then forward with the first thing, and I'll try to address each of the things you brought up. In terms of like the larger purpose, I'm very blessed. I found it. This is it. The Adventures of Cyberman. I guess, I'm supposed to be an alter ego, sort of a superhero in a fun way. So that's my purpose. I know that now, because I've been working on this for a long time, and I feel at peace. One of the things that this process has done, it's been a catharsis for me, and telling this story to you. I mean, I have not talked to a lot of people about this yet, because we're just in the process of creating the comic. It's not finished. And so I think I found my purpose. The second thing I would say to you, a very good insight you brought up, which is 93% that are in the of people that are in the cybersecurity world actually come from technology. Only 7% come from the social sciences or the marketing and communications realm. And that makes sense, because it's a technology issue, at least at first. Now it's become a communications issue. And so my background, fortunately, really fits very well into communicating very, very complex issues into terms that people can engage with and enjoy. So now I'm going to go to your question about resources. There are wonderful, wonderful resources and that are available for victims of cybercrime. And one of the ways that we're going to spread the word about when the comic and we're going to have an online platform too, by the way. People will be able to buy a single issue of the comic, online for very modest costs, $15. We're putting about $1,000 worth of best practices in it. So I want people to be able to afford it. But there will be another group of people who want to go deeper into it and to actually get trained, and so we're going to have an online forum that people can go and take an online course to get deeper and skilled on how to protect themselves. And in terms of victims advocacy, there are a lot of, if you type in the word cybercrime victims, you'll see lot of results of great, worthy organizations putting out information. I mean, remember, I mentioned to you earlier that the LinkedIn contacts are all these good people. There are millions and millions of great people who want to do the right thing, around the world on this topic, and they will help you. And one of the things that this is really more down the road, because this is a complex undertaking I'm in right now, but inside the comics to have actual links in the electronic version of the PDF, to actually have links. So as Cyberman is going through these adventures, and we're talking about, let's just say, phishing, then you can click here and then get, legitimate, deep knowledge about the topic. So that's, we want to make Cyberman a kind of a curator of information to help people protect themselves online.
That's really welcoming, and that's good to know. Now, we have been talking about the impact that happens because of social media to areas, and so the impact that happens to businesses. But there is also a large class of kids. I mean, kids that are impacted by social media, children of all ages, teenagers. They are all impacted in such a cruel way. I mean, cyberbullying happens, and all kinds of crimes happen, which are not actually crimes, but they make the kids take such bad decisions. They lose hope. They sometimes, commit suicide, and all such bad things happen to kids on social media. So, is there any effort going on to help the kids that are impacted by these social media crimes?
Yes. There are a number of law enforcement initiatives. One of the first people that believed in my story was a guy named Richard Geary, and you can go to his website. It's IROC2.org, and it's called the Institute for Responsible Cell Phone and Online Usage. And he's developed a whole program for exactly what you're saying, where he and his team go into schools and they educate people on precisely what it is that you're talking about. And referring back for a moment to your larger question, no, there's no getting away from the internet whatsoever. No, I only see dependency accelerating, and you just I think there's the good of the internet, outweighs the bad by who knows how much, but it's great because it brings people together in the world, and it democratizes information and knowledge, and those are wonderful, extraordinary sorts of things. You just have to be careful about how you do it.
Yes, very true. But see, since the capability of going live and sharing the video live has happened, a lot of bad things are happening. A lot of good things are happening, and a lot of bad things are also happening. Cyberbullying, where personal assaults, for example, rapes, they are shared online. The live rape is happening on Facebook. I'm not sure if it's Facebook, but I heard that it happened. So I don't want to name Facebook like that, but I heard that it happened. Live rapes are happening, and then all different kinds of casualty of victims are going through this disgrace and humility because of the live. Somebody is being bitten on live video, and how can they overcome this kind of victimization? How can they overcome this kind of assault when we don't have this capability? We don't have cyber live police that can stop this kind of crimes happening or shut off the video feed. We don't have that capability, or the technology companies, they don't have that at this point. They don't. We don't even have that capability in geospace. If a crime is happening, if the cop is nearby, they are able to stop. But most of the crimes that are happening, we are not able to stop them in real time. So there are a lot of things that are happening not only in geospace but in cyberspace that are very, very troubling. And when it involves these kind of little children who are vulnerable, who cannot defend themselves, how to minimize the impact of this kind of assaults on these cyber victims?
Well, that's an incredibly important and complex issue that you're bringing up here. The only thing I would amend to one thing you said is I don't think that the technology companies are lacking the capabilities. I think they're lacking the will. And this is something that we see in the United States playing out right now in front of the American Congress, because there have been hearings regarding events with alleged Russian hacking into the U.S. System and things like that. And so the senior people from the major technology companies were brought in to testify, and we are starting to see some change and some more monitoring, some more they hate the word censoring for sure, because the internet is based on the egalitarian availability of information to everyone, so they have resisted being having to be the role or the gatekeeper of content, of which the sad things that you're talking about are a type of content. But at least now, and this is very recent, in the last 6 months, they're being held to task because of some of the things that have happened. And so at least in the United States, our mainstream media is regulated. there are some censoring, of content, and I'm not an expert in this field, but if I had to vote on it, I think that the giant social media platforms like those you described do need to be much more proactive about curating and denying access to some of the content. Then the question becomes freedom of speech. Who decides? What can and cannot be included? Do you link it to existing laws in a particular jurisdiction, but the laws in the United States are going to be different than those in India? Control is antithetical to the basis of the internet. So, but I'm referring back to the fact that there are so many great people, and there are a lot of great people at the big technology companies that are the platforms that are now starting to look more at a role of being curators of some content.
Yes, we have to, and I hope that you made a statement that maybe they have the capability, but they don't have a will, and I hope that the technology companies, if they have the capability, then I'm not sure what would prevent them to take a stand against stopping this kind of crimes, because what good comes out of showing the live rape or cyber pornography and where kids are involved and all that? What good will come out of that? So I hope that no technology decision maker would, just because of getting better ratings or getting more members or more people live, that they would not succumb to these kind of evils. And I am sure that they are not going to, because no sane technology executive would want to achieve anything by going this path. This is such a disturbing way or disturbing things. You cannot even imagine if adults cannot see how to overcome this kind of trauma and this kind of impact of the cyber crimes. For kids or teenagers.
I can tell you what I'm doing about it. So this is just one. What I'm doing about it is I reached out to the chief technology officer of Facebook, who accepted my connection, of Google, which includes YouTube. And so I reached out to these folks and am inviting them to help sponsor Cyberman. And this is it's self-serving in my sense, I acknowledge, but I think Cyberman can be an industry-wide platform to help solve some of these issues that you're bringing up. And by having these big technology companies taking a proactive stance about keeping people safe online, which they all do, by the way, they all have fantastic education and awareness programs for sure. This would be just a slightly different way to accomplish the same objective. So, if any of them see this podcast, please call me. I could use your help.
Oh, I hope that they listen. The right decision makers listen. We have many decision makers from all across nations that watch our webcast, as well as listen to the podcast. And I urge them to seriously take a look at these issues that impacts everyone, irrespective of age and irrespective of nationality or race, color, religion. And we want to make sure that cyberspace is safe enough that we can create something wonderful out of cyberspace, and that we don't have to go towards a point where people have to seriously think about not going forward on the internet, or not being on some website, or not being on social media. So we all want to make cyberspace secure and safe for everyone. So what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners?
Well, first, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this story. The second thing I would say is, in a larger sense, one of my favorite quotes is, when smart people get together, good things happen. And this has been true with the work that you're doing, and it's certainly been true as of 1 month ago, when I, just started telling people about this, the adventures of Cyberman. And so if you would like to participate in some way, if you have content or perspectives or stories, or access to people that can help scale Cyberman globally, you can just go to my LinkedIn profile, Gary Berman in Miami, Florida, and just connect and we'll make some great things happen. So I'll stop by saying thank you again.
Wonderful, Gary. So thank you so much for participating in Risk Roundup today, and we appreciate your thoughtful insight on the impact of cybercrimes. And we were touched by hearing the story of what you had to go through, what you lost, and what you gained. Because of what impact of the insider cybercrime that you had to go through. So our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from listening to your story and from the understanding you provided on the need for cyber literacy and awareness today and in the coming tomorrow. So even if a single individual benefits from listening to your story and takes some measures to protect themselves and understands the impact of cybercrimes and prevent being a victim of cybercrime, this Risk Roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So the challenges and complexities of evolving cybercriminal threats and its impact has crossed the barriers of space, ideology, and politics, demanding a constructive collaborative effort of all stakeholders, individuals as well as entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. Risk groups, cybersecurity, geosecurity, and space security risk research centers are created to identify, evaluate, and manage the risk facing NGIO NCGs, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. It's not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security, so if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch the Risk Roundup webcast or hear the Risk Roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.